I'm just excited to be here and excited to see so many familiar faces. I got to serve on the Taste and Ingredient Board for several years, and so it's when, right after I met Judy, I was excited to do that. And I've stayed in touch with several of the teams that I've met throughout working with Taste and Ingredients. So, I'm Facebook friends with Max Beret and Morgan Abbott, and just wonderful folks that continue to do this work that you guys are doing now, well into their college careers and beyond. So excited to be here with my friends, Stacey Malkin and Renee, and everyone here. So it's a wonderful family of folks working on these issues. I don't know that I'm any Batman, but I do work on these issues, and in fact, I think the exciting thing is that it doesn't take much of a Batman to work and make change on many of the issues that we all care about. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about that, building a better food system, and sort of the grassroots efforts that make up actually creating a better food system. So a lot of us have been telling our personal stories, and I thought I would tell you a little bit about where I come from. So this is actually kind of the landscape as you used to look out from my backyard out in Arizona. A little bit different maybe from where some of you grew up. Maybe not the folks from Austin, a little bit more similar. But it's a desert landscape, it's dry. It's just not a place where you would think about a lot of agriculture. You would think about, you would sort of think is like this breadbasket of America. And funny enough, just down the street from here is a gigantic cotton operation. I grew up just down the street from a gigantic cotton operation. And this is part because of what was promoted in Arizona for much of the state's life. We were taught in grade school about the 5 C's. I don't know if anyone ever learned these in other states, but the 5 C's, the things that made up the history of our state, were copper, cotton, cattle, citrus, and climate. So extractive industries, growing a bunch of really water-intensive agriculture in the middle of the desert, a bunch of cattle also in a place that was a little bit challenging, and then climate. Well, probably all these things lead to some major impacts on our climate. So those are the things we were taught growing up. And so I grew up thinking and caring about these issues, had some early moments of being sparked to want to work on them. I remember playing on the soccer fields early in my life and having difficulty breathing because of all this stuff in the air and going like, gosh, we should do something about this. And so I went off to college, like many of you, trying to figure out what I should do next. And so I studied environmental policy, and unfortunately I didn't have really cool people like Debbie Raphael to work for. I tried working at the California Energy Commission very briefly and really struggled there. And then I worked for a state legislator really briefly and found that really challenging as well. And because I felt like every time I tried to do something good, I hit my head up against this other person who didn't want to make a difference. This political appointee, this elected official who cared more about the person that was contributing to their campaign or where they were moving to next than they cared about these issues. And so I got really frustrated. But what I realized is that when they got enough letters from constituents, got enough phone calls, when enough people kind of came together, they decided, you know what, maybe we'll do something a little bit different. Maybe we'll pay attention to that issue. And so for me, that was the early lesson, is that when enough people come together, when we make our voices heard, we can make the change we want to see. And so that's been kind of the driving, I think, mantra for me as I work on pesticide and a whole host of other issues. So I want to talk a little bit about some of those. I don't think we need to go into this much, but I think most of us recognize that our current food system is broken. And so we recognize that it's just not good for our economy, that we are not, our food is artificially cheap, and we know that it's having really profound impacts on our health and on our environment. And so, when I think about my 6-month-old son who I left this morning as I drove across the Richmond Bridge, and was thinking, we are just leaving a horrible legacy for him and, his friends and his family, and we need to do something about it. When we talk about at Pesticide Action Network, this idea that we need to get off of this treadmill. So we're running along on this treadmill, things are going along we're sort of continuing to throw in these agricultural inputs, we're continuing to burn lots of fossil fuels, we're continuing to destroy our air, our water, we're continuing to destroy these things, and we're stuck on this cycle, right? And so we've got to get off of that treadmill. And so this is where I work, Pesticide Action Network. We're actually an international network. We have 5 regional centers across the globe. We actually started in Penang, Malaysia 30 years ago when a group of people got together and said, God, there's all these horrible things happening across the globe. We need to do something about it, and the best way to do that is in the international arena at that time. We need to sort of create these treaties that make things better across the world, because so many people are being victimized by exposures to really horrible toxins, that farmers are being penalized, that they're not being supported to undertake the type of agriculture we'd like to see. And so we created these regional centers of people working on these issues. I work here in the Bay Area for Pesticide Action Network North America. But we collectively come together to try and advance kind of this vision for an ecologically sound, socially just agricultural system. So I want to talk about a few little campaigns, some stories of success, and then some place that I'd like your help. So really quickly, this is actually not directly affiliated with Pesticide Action Network, but I just thought it'd be fun to tell you about campaigns that I've been involved in my life and in recent memory. So I recently moved from Sacramento to the Bay Area. I lived in Sacramento, where it turns out that it's illegal to have chickens. So if you live in the city limits, it's illegal to have chicken. We know that for a variety of reasons that having chickens is not a bad idea. Having them in your own backyard, turns out the eggs are more nutritious, turns out it decreases the carbon footprint, some of the stuff that Renee's showing in the Meat Eater's Guide, and better pest management. I don't know if you guys have chickens, but they eat the pests in your backyard. So it turns out it was illegal. So a group of us neighbors got kind of frustrated with that idea. I wanted to have them, my neighbors wanted to have them. We decided that's silly. Why is it illegal to have chickens in our backyard? So we formed a group, and we decided that we would work to legalize backyard chicken keeping. And we decided that, well, we needed to get the word out there about it. So we got, we talked to all the local newspapers. They thought, of course, our name and just the concept was ridiculous, and so they wanted to cover it. And so we made sure we were in, the daily newspapers and the weekly stuff, and got a lot of coverage on the issue. And then, we exerted a fair amount of political pressure. So we showed up at political hearings. We talked to decision makers. We said to the Sacramento City Council, you need to pay attention to this issue for all these reasons. It makes sense for us to have backyard chickens. And guess what? We won. It turns out when a group of people come together, they make their voices heard, we can make a difference. We got a law passed last year that now allows people in the city of Sacramento to have backyard chickens. So not that complicated. A group of people come together, make our voices heard. Yeah, it's a bit of energy, but we can achieve simple things. So this is at the local level. At the state level, a little bit bigger undertaking. Who here likes strawberries? Raise your hand. All right, so most of you. Unfortunately, my wife is allergic, so I miss out on this a lot. But in strawberries in California, we grow a majority of the nation's strawberries. I'm gonna have to go over a teeny bit. And so we grow a majority of the nation's strawberries, a big part of our agricultural economy. Unfortunately, the way strawberries are grown in this state, and thus the rest of the country and even the globe, is that we use these big machines. We inject things called soil fumigants into the ground. They sterilize the ground at up to and over 100 pounds per acre. They're drift prone, workers get exposed to them, people living near the fields get exposed to them. They're horrible stuff. And it turns out that the state of California was considering approving an even worse one of these a few years ago. One called methyl iodide. Here it is being used at very few ounces in a laboratory setting. We knew about it, and the science continued to reveal it was cancer-causing, a reproductive toxicant, a groundwater contaminant. The science is there. We didn't need any more information, and so we needed to act. So we formed a campaign. Instrumental in doing that was getting a group of people together. So we built a coalition. Here's Sal, who's a high school student in the Watsonville area, one of the leaders on the Central Coast, and actually a group of teachers on the Central Coast. I think just like many of the folks in this room were frustrated, angry, and decided that we needed to do something about it. So we also decided we need to talk to people online. we decided we talked to thousands upon thousands of people online and let the state know that it's not okay to approve a pesticide like this fumigant methyl iodide. We actually set a record of letting that state agency know. We decided we also need to get the word out even broader in the media, right? So we got some coverage and a variety of outlets talking about this issue. We needed to let people know about it, make our voices heard. And then we needed to let specific decision makers know about it. So here we are speaking at the Santa Cruz City Council. This is the Salinas County Board of Supervisors. We're at the very local level talking about it as well. In the heart of strawberry country, letting those elected officials know it's not okay to let this thing be used. And guess what? We won. A group of people came together, they made their voices heard, and we won. So I'm already over, but I will say quickly this last thing that I need your help in. So local, state, national level now. So many of the things that we were eating this morning, folks probably enjoyed some of the fruit, I think, on the table downstairs. We know that 1 in 3 bites of food that we eat rests on bees for pollination. They don't pollinate 95 kinds of fruits and nuts in North America. Things like almonds, which are huge agricultural importance here in California, cherries, apples, blueberries, the list goes on. It's obviously a lot of money for our entire agricultural economy. I think that's actually underestimates it. And so we've got a major problem. Bees are dying. This thing called, whether you call it decline or colony collapse disorder, whatever you want to call it, bees are declining in really substantial numbers, about 30% annually, if not more. And so we need to do something about it. What we do know is that the science tells us that there's some impact of this new emerging class of things called systemic pesticides. They're taken up through a plant. As a farmer plants that seed, the pesticide is taken up to kill anything that touches that plant through its pollen, through this sort of guttation droplets, the plant sweat, and anything like that. And so we do know is we have the science with us. So we started building a coalition of folks, some beekeepers, scientists, environmental organizations, farmers, gardeners, and students. And we started getting some media attention. We've also started reaching out online. And we started talking to people about what the food that they eat, some of the impacts that there are on bees. So it's somewhat similar to the Dirty Dozen database. This database tells you specifically what the products, the pesticides found on food, conventional food and organic food you buy at the store, and some of the impacts that might be on bees. So just 2 things I'll leave you with. Is one, there are lots of things you can do in your own backyard. And then, so becoming a backyard beekeeper, to knowing what's on your food, posting signs, taking our pledge. And we need your help growing this movement. So we need to hold leaders accountable. We need to build community. Consider things like hosting film screenings to educate your community group and help us get the word out in the press. So it all comes back to the same lesson that I said earlier. When enough people come together, make our voices heard, we can make the change we want to see. So thanks.